That's it.
Thank you, John. Given that our Catalyst model at these Sync events, we like to do a little question answer between him and I, and then we're going to open it up to you guys. So if you guys want to start jotting down notes and questions, that'd be appreciated. So do you want to sit here or here?
Either way.
All right. So we didn't go into a couple things that you're pretty well known for, and I think a lot of you out here, if you haven't heard already, Info Tchotchke is something that John has been composing over the last, how many years?
About 4.
Okay, so 4 years, and he's pretty consistent about it. And a lot of people have questions about, should I be online blogging? How do I get my word out there? And John and I have had a few discussions. Could you touch upon, as an entrepreneur, would you recommend this? Is it something that...
Yeah, so the idea of blogging, I think you have to be careful with trends, right? Trends versus fads. I'm not saying blogging's a fad, but I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs that feel like I have to blog. If I don't blog, I'm not going to be looked upon in the community, in the right way. And I've never looked at any tool like that. Blogs are just another tool. To me, if the tool's driving the needle, moving the needle, if it's driving revenue, if it's pushing your business forward, then blog away. I'm on the board of a couple of companies that have great blogs. They're very active. They put resources into it, and it moves the needle. We see that it moves the needle. We can track, that it's drawing customers to their product. If it's a vanity project, obviously the answer is no. If it's not moving the needle at your company, it's probably not time well spent. Now, the reason I am doing the blog is it started as a creative exercise. I just wanted to do it. I wanted to get some of these thoughts out there. I could care less if anybody read it. It wasn't a vanity project. I wasn't out there promoting it. And then what I found is it actually became a very powerful tool for me, just for me, to coalesce my thoughts for my students. So when I would start to think about a lecture that I was doing, to really force yourself to sit down and write something out, 4 or 5 pages. It's not, my blog is not like the typical blog. It's not sort of 5 bullet points and, tweet it. I tend to write a lot, right? So it's not for everybody, believe me. I get a lot of comments like, dude, learn about bullet points. Sorry. But that's because I'm trying to, it's really an exercise for me to be thoughtful and to help the students. And then finally, lastly, I found it's been a very effective tool for me to direct students to a thoughtful response, not just students, to direct people to a thoughtful response as opposed to an off-the-cuff response. So for instance, I get the question, should I get an MBA? Well, I could sit here and give you my 5-minute off-the-cuff, or I could say, I wrote about that. If you don't mind, take a look at that. I'm not trying to be presumptuous and assuming that everything I write is golden. But if you want to take a look at that, and if you have any questions, let's talk about it. Mm-hmm. So it's helpful.
Excellent. Opportunity and knowing when it's knocking. If you're getting presented with an entrepreneur that's dancing in the streets, how do you know that's something that...
that's not going to be the most foolish thing and it'll be captured on a cell phone?
Well,
so it's tough. Opportunity and determining when it's really an opportunity and when it's not, I'm not going to kid you, it's hard. I think the first step there is, and we try to instill this in the students in my class, is opening your eyes and ears to the world around you. So I use the analogy of Van Gogh, right? Van Gogh would walk through a field and he would see a rock that was so enchanting, he would just set up his easel and he would paint that rock for 8 hours. Hundreds of people would walk by and go, what the hell is this guy doing, right? It's crazy. Or he would see a cypress tree and the same thing would happen. I want my students and encourage other people to open their eyes and really become sort of these entrepreneurial Van Goghs. Like, look for opportunities. If you know the story of Ray Kroc, that guy walked into the McDonald's Brothers restaurant. It had been up for years. It had been successful for years. He walked in, saw the same thing that thousands of people saw, and yet he saw it differently. He saw it as a multi-billion-dollar corporation. He had his eyes and ears open. He was a 47 or 48-year-old middle-aged man, had never really done anything significant in his life, but he had his entrepreneurial eyes open. So that's the best advice I can give you.
No, so going into teamwork a little bit more, you touched upon the people at Expert City. Jeff, do you have a slide of the different 4? Could we look that up?
So
in regards to the tribe?
Yeah, I think it's one of the next slides there. Just real quickly on, again, I'm an elemental guy. I'm not an academic. And so when I was sitting there thinking about what kind of societal structures have worked really well for mankind, One is the tribe, right? Tribes have been around for many, many eons, far longer than, the modern man. And so I went through and thought about what are the roles of a tribe, what are the different specializations that made these such successful organizations. And then I looked at Expert City, because I was still there at the time that I came up with this. And we can quickly go through it. So, again, not trying to claim that 4 people made it happen there, but just to give you a feeling for when you're out there trying to figure out who should be on your team, what are some of these major classifications or categorizations that you can use to identify people? So one is every tribe needs a hunter, right? They need a producer. They need somebody that can be very autonomous, can kind of be pointing towards the mountains. It can say, you know what, I'll be back in 2 weeks with some meat. And they go off and they make it happen and throw the meat down in the middle of the village, and they do a big dance because we like getting booyahs, right? Salespeople like booyah. So we get the booyah. And then we need the administrator or the skinner to make something of that meat. So we just throw it down. If we just threw it down in the middle of the tribe, it would rot, right? Nobody would be nourished. This is Brian Donahue. Brian is the CEO of AppFolio, one of the most talented executives in Santa Barbara. He's a great guy. All of us played many roles at Expert City, but Brian's consistent role was that of sort of the administrator. He was the person that made the deals work. So if I closed a deal with Oracle, or if one person on my team closed a deal with Oracle, Brian is the one that made us look good by making that deal succeed. And then every tribe has to have a shaman, right? You have to have somebody that's a deep thinker, that's a visionary. This is the person that will say, you know what, if we just curve that fish hook and put a little barb on the end of it, we can catch 10 times as many fish. And that was Klaus Schauser. Without Klaus Schauser, I wouldn't be standing here talking about Expert City. He was the first guy dancing, right? He and 2 of his PhD students started the company. So these people think differently, they're visionaries, and they take the whole productivity of the tribe to a new level. And then lastly, of course, every tribe has to have a chief or an elder. In our case, it was that charming gentleman I mentioned earlier, Andreas von Blattnitz, whose main role at Expert City, again, we all did many things, but when I go back and think about it, he was such a calming force at our company. We were just duking it out, right? Trying to make it work, trying to succeed. Lots of strong personalities here and beyond. Pictures that aren't on here. We all had strong personalities. We had strong opinions. And Andreas was just a master at keeping everyone happy, keeping the company cohesive, as you would have to do as a tribal chief, right? The tribal chief isn't going to be successful if the hunter and the skinner are fighting all the time. Quit bringing back that rhino meat. I can't do anything with it, You got to have somebody that's standing there going, okay, let's talk about this. And that was the role that Andreas played. So clearly tribes have other specialties, but I really think these 4 specialties have to be in your company at some level, and we certainly were very fortunate to have them in Expert City.
Now, could you touch
Long answer
upon?
to a short question.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. So you've got the 4 guys here. Egos involved, humility.
No egos.
No egos.
No egos. No, of course, right? We were all, something that Expert City was fortunate is we were all accomplished in our own right. It was just sort of weird how it all came together. This wasn't Computer Motion. Computer Motion was a lot younger team that hadn't really accomplished much of anything, and we suffered for that. And I'm putting myself in that boat. Here, Andreas had been involved with AOL Europe. Brian had been involved with Blockbuster, ran one of the largest call centers in America. Now, Klaus was one of the youngest tenured professors at UC ever. And I had some experience too. So we were really lucky. So look, we weren't egoless, but I think one thing we did very well is we subsumed our egos for the good of the group. And in fact, I think we actually really, really hurt ourselves to make the other people look successful. And I think that's an important part of a culture. It's a culture of serving each other as opposed to serving yourself. We had that culture.
And so you also touched upon when you hire people based off that.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I would, it's hard to figure that out, right? When you're hiring someone, it's hard to really know if they have that service orientation.